Our daily Bible reading today comes from Psalms chapter 96 through chapter 102. And our daily devotional today here at Carrollton Christian Fellowship is from Psalms chapter 96. And what we see in Psalm chapter 96, this kind of concludes that 4-day picture that I had mentioned earlier, to where in the 4 days ago, we looked at and we saw a prayer for salvation, a prayer that the nation would be saved from their time in captivity. And then 3 days ago, we saw that the psalm there, and the psalmist had cried out to the Lord and prayed for and a praise for being saved and out of captivity, and then a prayer that knowledge and understanding will be given, and that they will be restored back to the Lord, and that they will have revival in their lives. And yesterday, what we saw in our devotional there, in that 3rd day of the 4, was we saw that the psalmist, during a time of being in the wilderness, had written a psalm and prayer to the Lord that the Lord would bring them or bring him out of a dry spell and out of a time and point and period in the wilderness. So we saw that whether or not that was the Moses from those in that time of bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt, or if this was another Moses in another time of the history of the children of Israel. And then today in our devotionals, what we see that this is a psalm of praise to the Lord, and a psalm calling on all the inhabitants of the earth to sing praises to the Lord. And so what we see is that verses 1 through 3, that this is a song of praise to the Lord, a song that is a new song. So a song from his people to him. And then in verse 4 through 6, we see why God deserves his praise. Why? And then in verse 4 through 6, we see why God deserves to be praised. And then in verse 7 through 9, we see that the psalmist calls on the entire world to worship the Lord. And then in verse 10, we see that the psalmist writes to those who do not know the Lord, and that the psalmist calls on those who do not know the Lord to worship the Lord, and that those who do know the Lord are to be a witness and should show and be on display to those who don't know the Lord of why and how the Lord is worthy to be worshiped. And then in verse 11 through 13, we see the joy, and the psalmist writes about the joy for all of creation, for the fullness of time of the Lord's return to reign on earth. And so, in speaking of and talking about the return of Jesus to take possession of that which we know of him paying and purchasing and dying for there on the cross. So I hope that this can be a good encouragement to you. I hope this can encourage you throughout the rest of your day to sing praises to the Lord and to be a witness to those who do not know the Lord, so that they will know and understand why the Lord is worthy to be worshiped and praised. And so I hope that these past 4 days have been a great encouragement and a great peace, so that in different points and times and trials in your life, you can know on what psalm to go back to, and what psalm to sing out to the Lord, and what psalm to pray, and what song to sing praises to the Lord about. And also that when we see another individual, we can also use that psalm to also encourage them. So I hope this can be a blessing to you, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So take care and have a blessed one.